Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Helen Fritsch on the podcast. She's a flight attendant as well as an IFBB pro, a podcaster as well. I'll leave a link to her podcast down below for anyone interested in that, as well as a published fitness model. And she's coming to us all the way from North Carolina. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Helen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ryan, for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, first of all, before we get started, what's the weather like in North Carolina today?
Well, the hurricane is just off the coast here, but we're about 3 hours from the beach. So it's overcast and a little windy, and it looks like it's threatening rain, but we're just supposed to expect some brief showers. Nothing major here. So we've lucked out.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that hurricane that's been coming. So yeah, hopefully things don't get so bad there. I mean, here it's a little gloomy today, but not too bad. I mean, it's been a little bit cooler. But before I depress everyone with the cool temperatures, because I just had a guest on from the West Coast and it was beautiful there. Why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and adapt this health and fitness lifestyle?
Well, it probably started when I was a child. I grew up in a very athletic household. Both my parents were athletes. And so we just grew up always on the go. On the weekends, we'd be at the park. We'd be, running around playing games. And back then, in the 60s, we just made up our own games. And, you played in the streets and you played in the park and you played with your neighbors and, stuff like that. And my parents were always playing golf, playing tennis, running. My dad was a super athlete in high school and college himself. And so I always would look at his trophies and his medals and go through his scrapbooks. And I would always, even to a really, remember being a really, really young age, just aspiring to be like him one day. And so I could hardly wait. When I first started junior high, I joined the basketball team and I became a cheerleader. And then I was lucky. You look at kids today and all the things that they have available to improve their performance with diet, nutrition, and weight training. And back then, we didn't. And I was just naturally a gifted athlete. I lettered in 4 sports in high school: track, cross country, tennis, and basketball. And then I ran track at the University of Kentucky. So I have a very athletic background. Even when I got out of school, I continued to stay in shape and take, aerobics classes and jazzercise classes and all that good kind of stuff. And then probably, fast forward to my late 40s, early 50s, I became a certified personal trainer. And then finally at 55, I was like, wow, I'm already, pushing 60 and I need to do something. I want to just test my limits. And so I just decided that I was going to try to get in the best shape of my life. And someone mentioned bodybuilding and I looked at it and, I think like everybody, when they first look at bodybuilding, it freaks them out with a severe diet and the total lifestyle change. And I'm a certified wine specialist. That's my hobby. But I was drinking wine every day. And I thought, I can't, I can't do this. So I shelved it. But the universe had other plans for me. And I happened to walk in upon I was working out with a personal trainer and she was with a client and they were running late and they were practicing posing for a show. And so they started talking to me and my coach was like, see, Helen, you can do this. You can do this. And I thought, you know what? I can do it. And I literally entered a show in a month. I went cold turkey. And of course, now I laugh because it takes, 14 to 16 weeks to train for a show, but I didn't know any better. So that was probably a good thing. And went on this really strict diet for a month and stopped drinking. And I entered this 35 plus category bikini contest and came in third. And I loved my changes in my body and I just loved it. And so I just continued and I continued to improve and continued to do well. And then 2 years ago, I won my pro card. So
That is so awesome. And I got to say, you were looking at your dad's trophies and we can see behind you, you have your own trophies of your own now that now you can show off. And
you're right. My little sofa table back there. All my accolades. You're 100% right.
yep. So now you got your own. And I always love to say one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the internet is when they have those old videos with like those old jazzercise competitions that they used to have on like ESPN. I mean, I always watch those every once in a while to get a laugh. And yeah, I remember when I was a kid, my mom would still have those old, VHS jazzercise videos that she'd pop in. And yep, that just brought back memories saying that you did that as well. But I always love to say now, I mean, especially if there's 100 people in the weight room, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started with the weight aspect, sort of figuring out what worked best for you? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What worked best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
I agree 100%. And when I first started this bodybuilding adventure, I felt literally like I was a rat in a maze. I didn't know what I was doing. And then you look at social media, you look online, you look at all the fitness magazines, and everybody is pushing, every single workout plan and supplement plan and diet plan. And I was, literally clueless. Um, right after my first show, I hired a sports nutritionist to help me with my diet, and she did amazing for me. And I actually entered a big national show, and I came in third in that show. So after that, I realized I just needed a coach because I just needed the workout aspect along too. So I hired a coach who did my diet and my fitness regimen, and just progressed. I did a little coach hopping in the beginning because I just couldn't find my niche. But I've been with my present coaches now for going on. It's been 2 years now. I've been with my coaches, and they're great guys. I have a strength coach and a diet coach, and they work together. So, but you're right. I mean, different body types require different types of training. My metabolism is through the roof, even at my age. So, I'm afforded the luxury where I can eat a lot of food and still not put on a ton of weight. But of course, I do work out when I'm training, 5, 6 days a week. But at the same time, other people can't afford that luxury, and they're on a 1,100 or 1,000 calorie a day, regimen, and I'm eating 2,300 calories a day. So it's, you really, there's no, it's trial and error. It really is trial and error. And you have to just kind of believe. And once you find a coach, just to, run the course with them and see what works for you. And if it doesn't work, then, cut ties and move on to someone else. I think that's what I did. So
I mean, I always say you're sort of like your own mad scientist where you're trying to concoct your own potion that works best for you. And it just genetics also plays such a huge part in it, like you're talking about with your metabolism, which leads me into my next question that I love to ask. I mean, everyone always has that one body part when they get started working out that really, really takes off. And everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind where they just have to train it into overdrive to get it to catch up. I'll give you mine first. I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of, lifting and loading boxes in warehouses, and you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those were basically the two scenarios that presented themselves. But I'm 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot where I have to train them into overdrive. I mean, I still get friends that when I walk in the gym and say, hey, Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year? And then it's like, you guys are real funny. You know that I work them 2, 3 times a week. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
shoulders and abs developed pretty well right off the bat, and those were the things that I took notice of most, like quickly responded the quickest. For me, my quads. I'm an ectomorph, so I'm long and lean. I've got those long muscles, so I work my quads to death, and I do have some definition, but nothing like I want to have. And my glutes are finally, coming along, but it was a major struggle of, working out with my trainer twice a week, just on hams and glutes, and doing these brutal, really, really heavy weight sessions. And, they do respond, but they're just slow to respond. And it's, looking at some of these little gals that I compete against who were, 5 feet tall, it's a lot harder for me.
I always say one of the biggest things that I found out when I started this podcast that was surprising is that a lot of them are on the shorter side. A lot of the competitors, men and women. So I talk to them, and then they're always like, "Oh yeah, I'm like 5 feet tall, like you said, 5'2", and I'm like, "Wow, that seems." But then it does make a little bit more sense because it's easier to pack on the muscle than when you have a little bit smaller of a frame. So yeah, being 6'3", believe me, I understand the complete opposite. So it is, yeah. I always say calves too are the number one big thing for me that really just will never grow because just that's just the way it is. I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow an ounce. So it's I mean, it just doesn't happen. So, and I wish that I could find something. But if anyone out there has any secrets, let me know. But obviously, like you said, you went into it, basically or head first. I mean, because you took 1 month basically to get ready for your first show. How did you change your second prep as opposed to your first one?
Well, I was accountable to my nutrition coach, and she gives me this big giant folder notebook of my diet plan, and then foods that I could substitute, and it was just totally Greek to me. And so that was a huge adjustment. But I had to go in and see her every week, and I got weighed and I got measured. So the body doesn't lie. What goes in, that definitely shows up. And so I had to, adhere to this diet, and I had to stay on track. And your peripheral vision, as you get closer and closer to a show, starts to narrow. And that just works for me. I feel very fortunate that when I go into prep mode, it's like flipping a light switch. It's on and it's on, and I don't waver, and I stick to the plan. And like, I just competed in a show last week, and the switch has been turned off, and I'm like totally relaxed, and I'm still eating good. But if I want ice cream or a glass of wine or, you know, something along that line, I just have it now. It doesn't even, I don't think about it. Whereas before it was like, oh, no, 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 I can't eat that. So I feel very fortunate that I have enough willpower because I'm a flight attendant and I fly internationally. So I'm overseas with my crews, and everybody's out eating and drinking, and I'm pulling turkey burgers and potatoes and Brussels sprouts out of my purse, when we're out. So of course that's a big joke, but it works for me. And I, longingly look at that, all the good fun food over there. But I'm lucky that I had that kind of willpower.
No, yeah, and we hear so many stories about that. I mean, like just going to restaurants and you only get the water, you bring your own food. I mean, and that's why I think one of the reasons why I love having, bodybuilders or health and fitness guests in general come on is because a lot of people just think that all it is you work out and then you go on stage and and you pose. Basically, that's about it. They don't realize all of the hard work and sacrifice that goes into that look. But you brought up a topic that I love to talk about because I always say I had the number one sleep specialist on the planet come on this podcast. He called all the way from Oxford in the UK, and first of all, he had one of those posh British accents where you just felt like you gained 10 IQ points just from talking to him. Where I even told him, I was like, you're just going to talk the entire time. I'm not going to say a word because it's like my brain is getting a workout. But we were talking about the importance of sleep. And I know when I read that you're a flight attendant, I was like, oh, that must be interesting with your sleep because you must be dealing with just an extreme amount of time zones. And I mean, when you're working out and maintaining this lifestyle, sleep is the most important thing when it comes to recovery. And it's just so important to get that proper amount. How does your body fluctuate? I mean, if you're going through all these different time zones, have you found a routine of yours that works in order to get the proper amount of sleep when you're dealing with all these different drastic time zones?
Yes, and the key is I stay on my time zone. I live in North Carolina, so I stay on my time zone wherever I'm at in the world, and so it just works for me. And you have to do that because you can't start, like, I'm flying overseas tomorrow to Munich. I can't start playing that game of, adapting to their time zone, especially when I'm having to go to bed around 3 or 4 in the morning. And, but of course, that's 9 or 10 o'clock their time. So I only sleep like maybe 3 hours at the most. And I physically have to drag myself out of bed. And I go to the gym, get a workout in, and then hit the streets and just, stay up and stay out. And then probably in bed by, 10 o'clock local time, which is between, like 4 o'clock my time, just so I can get my 8 to 10 hours, 8 to 9 hours of sleep. You're right. Sleep is crucial for me. It's absolutely crucial. And it's just routine. You just have to adapt. Even when I go out west, I mean, I'll be going to bed and it's still light out there, but I'm on my time, so it just works best for me.
I always say if I got less than 6 hours, good luck trying to get me to work out. It's like almost impossible just because I need my beauty sleep. But another question that was brought up when you're talking about how you go to the gyms, how do gyms in other countries differ from the ones in the US? Have you found any big differences?
Um, it depends. I mean, like for example, tomorrow when I go to Munich, we stay on the outskirts of Munich, and we're in a neighborhood. So they have a fairly small gym slash spa at the hotel, and you just have to make things work. I bring a lot of stuff with me, bands and other things that I have, and I've been working out for so long that I don't have any problems. They have weights at this one particular gym, a couple of treadmills, and I just make it work. So normally when I'm on my own overseas, if I'm lucky to hit a big gym, that's great. But mostly I just go to hotel gyms, and for me, I call it a fine tuning day because band work. I'll do like a high rep, high volume of band work. And I like actually getting on the treadmill and doing band work on the treadmill. So I can be on the treadmill 45 minutes, and I'll be getting, 100 reps, 150 reps of, I might be using light like bands or even light weights like 5 or 10 pound weights, but I'll get 100 reps in. So that for me, I work up a good sweat even doing that. So
Yeah, it's all about on days like that, yeah, like you said, just maintenance and just keeping everything steady because yeah, with those you're not gonna really be able to gain much, but it's all about just maintaining that and still keeping it going. But a thing that was the most shocked by out of anything on this podcast, I mean, I didn't really get it ahead of time, but now I understand it totally. Is that for so many of these competitors, the vast majority of them, posing is the hardest thing when it comes to the bodybuilding. I mean, it's harder than the working out, it's harder than the nutrition. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Posing in the beginning is petrifying because it's bad enough that you're getting on stage and you're by yourself and you're standing in front of a panel of 7, 8, 9 judges, and then on top of that, another 3, 4, 500 strangers, and you have all these bright lights shining on you. And then the surface of the stage, it could be smooth, it could be rough, it could be carpeted, but it's terrifying. And you really, everybody has flaws. Even the Olympians, they have flaws, but learning how to pose and turn your body and twist and just to hide those flaws makes all the difference. And it's all about fluidity and confidence. You have to walk out there smiling, head held high, posture good, and act like you own the stage. And as a pro now, sitting in the audience, we all started somewhere. We all walked onto the stage petrified, where you're like standing in the front, and then you're physically, instead of slowly or smoothly turning around, it's like you're cranking versus, like more fluid movements. But it's just all about experience. I don't get nervous getting out on stage anymore. I get kind of excited, take a deep breath, and I'm out there smiling and just, you've worked 14, 16 weeks, and you're out there for 2 or 3 minutes, 5 at the most. And so you have to act like you own it and show the judges that they need to choose you over the other girls. So it's just, posing is, I've seen girls lose shows because their posing was so bad. They had phenomenal bodies, but their posing was horrible. So yeah, posing is really, really tough, and you really need to find a good posing coach to help you. I have a posing coach. Everybody has a posing coach, so it's just imperative.
Yep. If you have the best body on the planet and if you're a bad poser, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're not going to win. So it's just such an important thing. And, a lot of people also don't realize the smiling part. Like you said, I had one guest from Australia and she said that the judges told her she would have placed better. But during, like, when they were doing the general call out, she let her smile down for about a minute or two. And they said, if you would have maintained that smile, you might have gotten more points and you might have won. So a lot of people don't realize, how important that is, where it's just the little things that a lot of people don't get when it comes to, I think, especially bodybuilding. But out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite and what is your least favorite?
Well, I think everybody loves doing their front pose, and I think everybody. For me, my glutes are probably my toughest area, and so especially for my age. So back posing to me, it's like, I try to do my back pose, but I don't spend too much time back there because the longer you hold poses, the more the judges are able to pick you apart. So it's best to leave your most flawed areas to the judges with the least amount of time. So that's, for me, that works for me. And I also too, I pride myself at being a really good athlete, but my balance sucks. So trying to make these fancy turns and doing these fancy walks, it's like, no, I'm getting out there. My routine is short and sweet, and then I'm off the stage.
I always said, if I, in the unlikely universe that I competed in a a bodybuilding show for women, I mean, the back pose would be my favorite, just because you can you smile down a little bit, you can kind of just relax just a tad. You can't really you can let your guard down sort of a little bit, but that's the one time where you can kind of get a breath in. But another big aspect is the heels that they make you guys wear. What has been your experience with those? Because we hear so many stories of heels being the detriment of so many competitors.
Yes, awful, awful. I mean, they're 5-inch heels. And so I actually switched from a 5-inch heel to a 4-inch heel, which made a world of difference. So if there's any competitors out there, no, and they'll tell you too that the heel height, there's no requirement. You don't have to wear 5-inch heels. You don't have to wear 4-inch heels if you feel more comfortable in a 3-inch heel. I mean, Sandy Williamson, who is the international head judge for the IFBB and the NPC, she's done many, many seminars where she wants you out there in a shoe that's comfortable for you, that you'll present yourself the best. I don't really normally wear 5-inch heels that much anymore. So for me, dropping down to that 4-inch heel made a world of difference, and it helped my posing tremendously. But yeah, 5-inch heels are are the death of me personally.
I always say, don't these people go through enough already? And you got to make them wear those heels out on stage. I mean, they make already a very hard thing almost impossible. But another aspect of the posing that I find just so fascinating is that for a lot of people, these posing sessions that you guys do, you get more of a workout in than your actual workouts sometimes, just because the body is not meant to be in that flex position for that amount of time. I mean, for a lot of people, it can just be so trying, and I mean. It's just so fascinating. We hear all these stories about people after shows that they're more sore than they've ever been in their life, and yeah, I just find that so fascinating. But now we go to a fun part because, as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. My thick Norwegian skin and being from the upper Midwest, where I mean, that basically goes with the territory. I never get tan. I either get farmer's tan, where let's be honest, that is not a real tan, or I just get burnt to an absolute crisp, even if I have an SPF of 1 million out. I was at a Twins game recently, a Minnesota Twins game, and I was out in the sun for probably about 15 minutes because I told them we're getting shade seats, but I still just got absolutely burned to a crisp. But bodybuilders get to get tan. What is that experience like for you when you get that tan on? We hear so many stories about how you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that like?
Well, the infamous, bodybuilding tan, it's actually my least favorite part of the whole show. It's getting that spray tan, it's ice cold, and then you stand in front of a cold fan. So it's just like the worst 10 minutes of your life. But I totally understand because your muscles do totally pop. Those stage lights are so bright and so harsh. But after everything that you go through and you go through peak week and then you're finally on stage, if it wasn't for that tan, then you're right, those muscles wouldn't pop. So it's definitely awesome. But then of course afterwards, trying to scrub that off, and I'm still a week later still scrubbing, trying to get rid of this spray tan.
Yeah, you basically become like a human statue where you can't sit on anything, you can't really lean up against anything when you have it on because we hear all the times too about competitors bringing their own bed sheets. And yeah, it just, again, if there's a checklist of all the things that these people have to do when they compete, that is definitely one of them. But a question that I ask all of my guests, whether they be my bands or my health and fitness, for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go on stage and perform live in front of hundreds of thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on. What is that feeling like when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all of that hard work that you've worked months upon months or sometimes even years on?
Well, I think, like I said in the beginning, you're terrified because you're going out there by yourself, and I, if you're not used to being in public like that, I mean, for me, I chuckle at myself because when I go to the pool or the beach, I'm very self-conscious, and it's not like I go to my chair and whip off my clothes and then parade around. It's like I sit in my chair, I take my clothes off. I don't like parading around in my bathing suit. So it's kind of bizarre that it doesn't bother me to get up on stage. But I think it's just because the lights are so bright and you can see the judges, but you really can't see the audience because the lights are shining on you. And I think that helps tremendously. But it's just a matter of continuously getting up there and getting more comfortable. Like I said earlier, I don't have any more nervousness or stage fright. It's easy for me now to get up there on stage. I even know a lot of the judges now because you've competed in so many shows. So when you see a familiar face, they smile at you, you smile back. But in the beginning, it's you're petrified and you're terrified, and that's what practice is all about. You have to practice, practice, practice. You have to practice your posing, and you just have to go out there and you realize that you're out there for just a couple of minutes. The NPC, the amateur athletes, even have less time. They have literally 10 to 15 seconds to go out there and present themselves, front pose to back pose, and then off they go. The pros, some pros are out there for a solid 60 seconds parading around. For me, I'm probably out there for 30 seconds, maybe, and then they'll do that's for individuals, and then you'll come out in a line, and then they start comparing and doing comparisons and stuff. But it is petrifying, but like anything else in life, practice makes perfect, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
When you're on that stage, does time seem to slow down or does it seem to speed up or is it sort of a mixture?
No, it doesn't slow down because it's fast paced, and you realize that you have to get out there, get your work done. And they have these people on stage called expediters, which they're kind of telling you where to stand and what to do. Once you finish with your routine, they'll shuffle you over to the side. Or so it's quick paced. The shows are huge. This last show I did last week, 1,300 athletes in the show. It was a 4-day show, and it started at 8 in the morning and didn't end till 4 in the afternoon, and then would start back up at 6 with finals and wouldn't end probably till close to midnight. So it's very, very fast paced. Everything's very well organized in the back, the lineups and everything. So it's just like boom, 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 boom. So it's a very well oiled machine. A lot of these shows are. So
Wow, that many competitors. Wow,
mhm.
that's absolutely amazing. But a question that I ask all of the IFBB pros that we have on the podcast is, what was that feeling like when they called your name and you realized that you're a pro? And for all the guests out there or the audience out there that doesn't know what that means, really, for a lot of these people, winning your pro card is the highlight of your bodybuilding career, just because that is the affirmation that you have worked your butt off, and that, I mean, you can finally compete in pro shows now. I mean, it really just has proven all of your hard work has really come to something. What was that feeling and experience like when they called your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
Well, it was awesome. I mean, they have prejudging, which means that you'll go out in the morning and do prejudging. And there's times where you kind of know where you place, and then there's other times when you're not really sure where you placed. So for that particular show 2 years ago, I wasn't sure. I felt like I was going to win, but then there was doubt because at the very end they started moving people around, and I thought, okay, are they moving people around because they've changed their minds, or are they comparing other people? So then the whole afternoon you're looking at pictures and you're wondering and worrying, and your emotions are all over the place. But it was extremely rewarding, and it was even more rewarding because it was on my birthday. So it was, I'm winning a big national show, and it's my birthday. I couldn't have asked for a better gift. So, and you're right. It took me 4 years to win my pro card. I have other friends where it took them 10 years. I have other friends who won their pro card in the first year. So once again, I think it's not only training and diet and dedication, but it's a lot of genetics too. Some of these athletes who come on stage and they're winning their pro card and like their first, second, or third show, that's a lot of genetics.
Yeah, we've had so many guests where it's either, their first show, their first year, like you said, we've had guests, it's worth like 15 years. So, I mean, it's a journey that really you don't know when it's going to happen, but I mean, it's just so I love hearing that story, or I love hearing stories about, winning pro cards, because I mean, it's just, especially, well, unless it's like someone who won their at their first show, cuz then it's like, okay, you didn't really have a journey then, really. You just competed in one show and you got it. But a lot of it is just, all that dedication that it takes into that. But now we go to another fun question. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh, normally, definitely. I'm a big chocoholic, and being, a wine specialist, I love wine. So I love big, bold Cabernets. So I normally bring a bottle of Cabernet with me, and sometimes I even bring my own chocolate cake. But if not, we'll go out. I think our post meal was I went out with a bunch of girls, and we had nachos and burgers and fries. And then I had dessert. I made these phenomenal gluten free brownies that I brought with me to the show. So we chowed down on those with over some red wine. So it was good.
So, out of all the wines on the planet, is there any specific year or bottle or type of wine that if you could have, you would enjoy the most?
Probably a 2007 Cabernet from Napa Valley.
Yeah, I am not a wine guy myself, but all of my female friends are absolutely just wine nuts, so they probably know more about that. I'm more of a hard liquor kind of guy, but yeah, I've had wine before. It's pretty good, but yeah, when you just wine, I mean, that's always fascinated me how it's one of those few things where it gets better with age. I mean, any other type of thing, you put it in for a while, and good luck having it taste the same. But a question that I love asking, probably my favorite question to ask, because so many people don't understand this, and I get all these questions all the time by friends who are like, oh, I love your podcast, but I was shocked by it, is that so many of these people don't realize that that look that you guys put on stage is not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look like that 24/7, and a lot of people don't understand that. And I think a lot of it's due in part to, we have shows like Biggest Loser, where I mean, these guests come on and they lose 150 pounds, and sometimes they're able to keep that weight off. So I think a lot of people associate that too then with bodybuilding, where it's like, these people have worked just as hard as those people, and they look so amazing, and they should be able to keep that body then because they've worked so hard for it. But they don't realize that you guys have sort of manipulated your body through all of the dieting and through all the working out into a look that is not really that healthy, and it's not sustainable. What was that like for you when you first realized that, like, hey, this look that I put on stage, that's the best that I'm going to look for a while, and I am going to have to gain weight?
Yeah, no, it's like I mentioned earlier. I have a super high metabolism, and I'm tall. I'm 5'9", and I'm like I have a long, lean, body. So for me, keeping on weight is tough, and I lean down and get into, show shape. And then, like, literally, the show was a week ago, and I've already put on 6 pounds. So it's a lot of it is water. A ton of it is water. So as you are getting closer and closer to the show, you start manipulating your water, and I normally drink a gallon to a gallon and a half of water a day. And then when you're coming up closer to the show, you're drinking a gallon, and then the next day half a gallon, and the next day a quarter of a gallon, and then the night before the show, you stop drinking water literally like around 6 p.m. And then you might start sipping like sip water if you're thirsty, and then you have the meal the next day and you'll sip water. Some athletes may use diuretics, but it's all about pulling that surface water off the skin once again to just show more muscle development. That along with the tan. So that look is phenomenal. And I think we all wish that we could have that look all year round because you look amazing and the pictures look great. But just like you said, it's not sustainable, it's not realistic, it's not healthy, and especially for the mind, because the bodybuilding is a huge mindset sport. It's you against you, and there's times when you're in a great mood and you're in the gym and you're all fired up, and then there's times when I come home from Germany and then I know I have to go to the gym and I'm worn out because I've been up since 11 p.m. my time, and I'm like, okay, so you're just going through the motions. So it's like if your mindset's not on it, then you're not going to be in it. So it's it's tough.
No, yeah, I mean, I just find that so fascinating because so many people just don't understand that you're not going to be able to maintain that. And so I love having people come on and share that. But another myth and misconception that I love to bust on this podcast is, I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear where if you go into the gym and you touch one weight, you're just going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And like I always say, I'd pay you my life savings then to find out what you did. I just talked to you for 5 minutes. I mean, you would be the biggest commodity of all time, but it's definitely, I mean, it's there's not a myth that is less true than that. But did you have that? Did you fear that when you were getting started in the weights? Because I know back in the day that was a lot of people thought that was a fact, basically, that if you touched a weight and you were a woman, you're going to get huge. But obviously, as your journey has gone on, it's proven to not be true. But how do you respond to that now? Because I bet you still hear that all the time.
You do hear that, and a lot of women are afraid of weights just because they don't want to put on muscle. But I think it all stems back again to your body type. For me, I'm long and lean. I could be in the weight room all day and I'll put on muscle, but I'll never be a Hulk. And a lot of women will come to me and ask me questions about losing weight, and but they're afraid to go into the weight room because if they want to lose weight and they start lifting weight, then that's going to be something that's going to clash. And I'm like, no, it's not going to actually, because the larger your muscles are, then the higher your metabolism is going to be. So it is a catch 22, but I think it's just you have to trust the people that you go to for help to help guide you, and that, like you said, it's a myth, and it's amazing to me that it's still around and women are still afraid of that. I still do hear that, and I definitely try to re-educate them as soon as that comes out of their mouth. Like, you're not going to put on all this muscle. Look at me. You're going to not only lose weight, but you're going to start redefining your body. I mean, I see people in the gym that I've seen in the gym for years, and they look exactly the same. And they're exactly the same because they're doing hours and hours of cardio, and then they're doing minimal weight training. And it's like, no, you should be doing more weight training and less cardio if you want to see an actual change in your physique. But that, to me, I'm like a little voracious sponge. I love listening to podcasts. I do a lot of reading, and I've just learned a lot on my own that way. And a lot of people, don't do that, and they listen to hearsay, or they'll listen to myths that have been going on since the 1970s. So it's just a matter of being re-educated. And a lot of times when I'm at work, I have a lot of flight attendants asking me questions, and I just try to help them with they're like, I can't lose any weight. And then they're telling me what their diet is. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And then they're like, oh, but I love this food and I love that food. And I go, well, that's great. But if you're looking to lose weight, then you would need to cut that out for a while, because that's hindering you from, your goal. So it's just a matter of being educated. And I think it's just a matter of, if wanting to do it, you have to have once again, the right mindset to, want to start a journey like that.
I couldn't agree more. And to sort of go off on that, I always say the one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men when it comes to working out is the confidence boost that it gives. I mean, we've heard so many stories of women on this podcast who have, made life-changing decisions, or it's really just helped them better their lives. And I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and impact every single aspect of your life. How have you used that confidence boost that working out gives you and had it impact your entire life? How has that impacted you?
Well, I started competing 6 years ago and I was in good shape back then, but the body is such a fascinating machine and it responds so quickly. You can see really big results in such a short amount of time, a week, 2 weeks. And just like you said, it is a confidence booster because if women who need to lose 20 or 30 pounds in the first week, they lose 5 or 8. And a lot of that is surface water, but it's simple things like one of my first questions is, do you drink soda? Like basic stuff, like, okay, just, people who just cut out soda lose weight. So it's just, a lot of simple tweaks that could be done. A lot of people are so set in their ways now and they're, making drastic changes in their diet or their lifestyle is not going to happen. So I think if you look at this realistically and, approach it where, you're interested in doing a certain thing, but, finding that right formula that would be conducive to your lifestyle, and then all of a sudden, your body will respond. I've had coaches where they'll tell me stories about, as a matter of fact, my present coaches, complaining about their clients aren't losing, they're not looking the way they should be looking, and then finally, my one coach said yes, and I walked into Whole Foods one day and I see blah blah, and she's sitting there eating a plate full of sushi. And he was just like, okay, she never said she was eating sushi. So he was so mystery solved. So the body doesn't lie. So it's just, what you put in definitely shows up, but it is amazing to me. And I think that's why I still love bodybuilding, because at my age now, I look better than I ever have in my whole life. And it's just because of the lifestyle. So as long as I continue to improve my physique, I'm going to continue to live this life.
That is so awesome. And yeah, I mean, just that confidence boost, I always say, just that feeling after you get a nice workout in. I mean, there's almost never a better feeling in the world. You just feel so much better. And I mean, it can really turn a crappy day into a better one. But a question that I find so fascinating, because there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out, getting in better shape. But one of the negatives is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's sealed on really tight. I'm still at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out, and every single time they come in with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and then carry in the groceries, being the good son that I am. But has that been a similar experience with you, where as you've gotten, stronger and as you've adapted this journey, that people just assume that you can do favors for them, like especially being a flight attendant?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. People will. Well, I'll even be at work, and they'll say, "Oh, give that to Helen, or Helen can get that," or I would work. I When I was a lot younger, I worked in retail, so they would be having me, carry out boxes. I actually back in 2008, 2009, took a leave of absence from being a flight attendant. I moved out to Oregon. I worked at a vineyard for a couple of years as a wine intern, and that was the most physically grueling manual labor I've ever experienced. It was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my whole life, but it kicked my butt. And when my first day, the whole crew, it was a crew of five guys and me. And I was the oldest. Everybody else was in their 20s and 30s. And they looked at me and they shook their head and rolled their eyes. And I'm laughing because I know how strong I am. And literally within the first couple of days, they were like, oh my God. And so then all of a sudden they're asking me to help them do this and do that. But wine boxes are 45 pounds, and rolling around barrels and bins and having to do all the stuff that we did, it was physically exhausting, but I did it all. And then at the end, everybody was really sad to see me go, and they wanted me to come back, and they all wanted to work with me when I would come, and so it was very, very rewarding. So you can't judge a book by its cover.
God, that's giving me flashbacks to when I was used to do it, the warehouse jobs where they had like a whole truck full of about 250, 60-pound packages. And they said, "Yeah, get this unloaded in an hour and a half." And I was like, "Oh, okay. That's gonna be fun." But yeah, those jobs, they can really set a really good foundation that a lot of people don't realize. We've had some people that have done that, like those manual labor jobs that can really set a good foundation. But obviously, you don't your look is not the average woman's look. I mean, when you walk down the street, if you're wearing like what you're wearing right now, you are going to get looks. What was that adjustment like? Realizing that, I mean, you're going to get a lot more attention now. What has that been like?
Um, it's very flattering. It's very flattering. Sometimes it's a little scary. Sometimes I have to kind of be a little stern and put my foot down because a lot of people just assume that they can approach you and say things and do things that really aren't appropriate. But especially especially through social media, getting a lot of comments through private messaging and stuff where I've had to block a lot of people just because of that. But I totally get what you're saying, and yeah, it does happen to me. It's just that I feel very fortunate, where I am today. At the same time, I'm kind, I'm gracious, but you can only be so kind and so gracious when it starts getting invasive.
Yeah, I've heard, believe me, I've heard so many stories of people on Instagram, especially women, and I think, if that ever happened to me, I wouldn't even have an Instagram account anymore. I'd just be like, okay, I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But yeah, I can remember when I was in a little bit better shape because now that I have my full-time job and I do this, I work out still, but not as much as I used to. I mean, just having girls just come up and start feeling your arms without even you asking them, you're just like, oh, okay, that's my arm. But let's be honest, I was a little vain back then, so I'd pump it up for them a little bit, and just show it off. But yeah, just you basically become like a human art exhibit, basically, where people just think that oh, they'll just stare, and it's just so fascinating for them, which I find it's just so funny to really think about that. But now we go to our audience favorite and my personal favorite, the little questionnaire where I'm going to ask Helen here about a half dozen health and fitness related questions that I ask all of my guests, and we're going to see how our answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So for our first question, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge at all times?
Chicken.
Any specific type of chicken?
I normally do organic, or the range free, no antibiotic. A lot of times it depends on what's on sale.
I always say chicken and eggs are our favorite, or our most popular answer, I should say. But out of all of your followers that you have on Instagram, what do you think would be one thing that they would be the most shocked to find out about you if they met you in person?
Um, Maybe my age.
Okay, it's been long enough in the podcast. What is your age, Helen?
62.
That's just ridiculous, everyone. I almost just want to quit. I almost just want to quit the podcast right here. That's just absolutely ridiculous. 62 years old. Good God. That's not even, I mean, but then again, yeah, she looks half that, and that's just another benefit of working out. But yeah, that's just 62, everyone. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. But moving on in the podcast before everyone just really feels depressed, because we probably lost about half of our viewers right there because they're just like, okay, this is BS. I'm gonna turn it off right now. But if you were to be approached and someone were to say, Helen, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Well, the shows are actually, there's good and bad. The shows that are regional shows and even national shows now, they're adding more masters categories, which I think is awesome. So they're allowing women like us to win their pro cards. I mean, they recently added a 55 plus bikini. They have 60 plus figure now at all these big national shows, which is great. So you turn pro, and then the bad part is that the pro league doesn't really offer masters categories at 50 plus, 55 plus, 60 plus categories for women. There are two 50 plus pro shows for us in bikini this year. And I just did the very first one last week. There's a second one at the end of October, which I can't do due to a family commitment. But that's it for the whole year. So I've been basically prepping for 6 months just to do this one show, where I normally do maybe 3 shows a year, sometimes even 4. And so if the NPC is going to continue to award pro cards at 50, 55, 60, then they need to offer venues in the pro leagues for us to compete in. So
That's one thing that I've heard, especially from the older guests too. And yeah, it's like, yeah, if you're gonna get your pro card, it's like, even though you still look amazing, it's like good luck against like a 35 or a 40-year-old that's in the Masters division. It's
oh,
just
that's what I've done. I've competed just to do it. My very first year, I did 4 pro shows, and one was a 35 show, one was a 40, one was a 45, and I came in last in every single one of them, which was fine. I mean, my body looked great. I was happy. I was competing with friends. I had a blast. But at the same time, it's like I'd really like to compete against people my own age, where I could really have a possibility of placing really well or winning a show.
no, yeah, I totally agree with that. But if you were able to go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
I would patience, 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 patience. You have to have perseverance and you have to have patience. I think when you're young, especially in our society today, it's like I want it now. Back when I was, a lot younger, it's everybody just wanted what they wanted and they wanted it now. And I just think that, I would just be like, don't be so in such a hurry to grow up. Don't be in such a hurry to, achieve those, things, because a lot of times those things are just things. I've learned my best um, life lessons. And I think I have more wisdom now than I ever have, just because you go through life, you experience ups and downs, obstacles and detours, and you obviously learn from those things. But once again, it's just about persevering and having the patience to just get through it. So,
Yeah, I would personally give myself a little bit of stock advice, invest in Amazon, invest in Google a little bit. But also, I just got to say, I love the fact that a lot of people want everything now and they want it today, because someone like me who puts in a lot of hard work at their job, I get so much more praise than I normally would have, because I'm the one person that actually shows up and actually does my work. So I tell other people, it's like, yeah, demand all that stuff, because I'll be the one that's getting all the praise than being the hardworking one that everyone's like, oh, he's the one kid his age that like actually shows up and cares. So, that's fine with me as long as I'm able to, get a little bit more praise for that. But now our last question of the questionnaire. If we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you just like to be at in your life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk again a year from today?
well, yeah, I do have goals and I would like to compete. I kind of chuckle at myself thinking, when am I going to stop competing? Being 62, I don't plan on doing any more shows this year. So a lot of my friends are like, no, you can't stop. You have to keep going. And that is definitely an option because I feel great. I do have, a couple of health issues that I'm dealing with, but they aren't hindering me from, going into the gym and training and all that kind of stuff. So, but also too, I know I've got my podcast, which is, it's called Age is Irrelevant. And I interview women 40, 50, 60, 70 and beyond who are defying the odds and rebranding the terms old age and over the hill. And I have a website called agesirrelevant.com. So right now I'm looking into making that, a brand. And I'm hopefully in a year, maybe doing a little Ages Irrelevant weekend retreat. And really, because there's so many women out there my age who don't know, they want to improve their lives and their lifestyles. They just don't know how. And so I think there's a lot of women out there like me who know how. And if we all get together, we'll be able to share this information and really improve the lives of others.
Absolutely, and again, age is irrelevant. I'll leave a link to all that stuff. And I gotta say, I have my own playlist on this podcast where you're gonna be like my 275th guest. You're gonna be my 20th guest. That's a woman that's fit over 50. So I can actually send your information to some of the other guests that I've had on and say, hey, she also runs a thing where she talks to older women about how they stay in shape. So I can definitely get you in touch with them, because I
Awesome.
bet they would love to share their story. But now, lastly, before we wrap things up, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh gosh. Well, obviously friends and family because everybody's been so supportive. And then if it wasn't for my NPC family and my IFBB family, I wouldn't really be where I am today either. Um, you know, this whole bodybuilding lifestyle has been great. I do love my job as a flight attendant. I've been doing it for 33 years, and so that is kind of. I'll do that. People ask me when I'm going to retire, and I'm like, when I'm in my grave, that'll be my last day. So just feel very fortunate overall to be in the position that I'm in and surrounded by people who support me and care about me.
That is so awesome. And again, you guys, everyone, go and check out her stuff. I'll leave her stuff down below. But I mean, it's just such an inspiration to have her on the show, and we cannot thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you, Ryan. It was great. Thanks for reaching out, and it was great chatting with you.
Absolutely. So again, you guys, Helen, thank you so much for coming on. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.